It's time to spill the beans with your host, Beans. Welcome to my podcast. Hey guys, welcome to my podcast, Spill the Beans. My name is Beans. Just a little bit of backstory about me, what I do, why I started this podcast is number one, the main reason why I dove into spirituality is because I didn't like who I was. Like I saw who I was and I was like, this is not a person who I wanted to be. So I was like, let me find who I want to be. And in the midst of finding who I wanted to be and what did make me happy, I discovered spirituality. And fun fact, I've been into spirituality. That's been something that I've been practicing and learning a lot about for about 10 years, actually. So that's the thing I know a little bit more about. I started with shadow work, which is gruesome. It's gruesome, right? It's a lot, brings up a lot of trauma and unpleasant feelings, but I am actually a fan of trauma work, right? Like I'm never going to say don't do shadow work. I think it's great. I think it's amazing. One of my favorite things to do. And then I started like my official practice probably about 5 years ago, right? Is when I was like, what are crystals? What are herbs? Like what are spells? Um, like what is this thing about astrology and the moon, that type of thing. And that's been fun. That's been really fun, honestly. And then I didn't really get into tarot until about like 3, almost 4 years ago. So the tarot thing is actually quite new, but I love it. This has been just such an amazing journey so far. Honestly, like I've learned a lot about myself, my intuition, how to trust myself, just how to deal with situations in general better. I learned a lot of different coping skills along the way just to handle all of the crazy problems that life throws at you. Um, and I've really enjoyed it, honestly, and I hope that I continue to enjoy my journey in the future. But to the reason why I started to create this podcast, the main reason why I wanted to create this podcast is because I go live on TikTok, feels like daily, right? And people have all of these questions that they're consistently asking me, and I would love just a official forum to answer these questions, right? I think it would be fun. I think it would be entertaining. I think it would be helpful, right, for people to hear what I have to say, for me to share my experiences. If you have a question that I'm able to answer, I would be more than welcome to answer it. Like I love answering questions. I love helping people. I love help guiding people and allowing them to also explore more in their journey because it's just an amazing, wonderful feeling. So that is my goal here. It's just to, number one, share my experiences, right? Let you guys know how things have been for me in my practice. And hopefully with that shared experience of how things have been for me, I can help you guys, right? Maybe we can find some common grounds, talk about some fun things. And that's what that is. I think a nice place to start when you're getting started with witchcraft or spirituality or anything like that is research. I think sometimes people take for granted the research aspect of it all. And they're just like, I want to get into the nitty gritty of it. They're like, I want all of the herbs, I want all of the crystals, I want to start doing all of the spells. Like, when can I start manifesting? And don't get me wrong, those are great things. Those are beautiful, amazing things. But with those also come research, like it's all research. And sometimes I don't think people realize just how much in research goes into doing spirituality and witchcraft, right? Like when you first get started, number one, that most of the time you don't know where to start, right? And you're like, what do I do? What even? Because it's all like it's a lot, right? There are a lot of different aspects to spirituality and witchcraft, and so it can be hard to figure out, well, what interests me. And usually what I tell people is, number one, just go for what you're interested in. If you see something and you're like, that's interesting, I think that's pretty cool, research it, right? Research it. And the thing about research is you want to find multiple sources. You don't want to just be like, oh, okay, I found this one webpage, I found this one book, and this is what it says, right? Because people are going to have differing opinions. People are going to have different ways to do things. They're going to have different thought processes. And so it's good to look at a variety of different things. Number one, to figure out which one resonates the most with you, which one speaks to you the most. but some of them are just not good. Some of them are just not credible, right? So if you're looking at multiples and you're like, this one's a little weird. This one is vastly different from the rest, right? Like, let's say we're talking about roses, right? And like all of the websites you see about roses and its properties, they're like love, passion, desire. And then you see something really weird, like it helps to bring in money, and you're like, that's suspicious. That's weird. I'd be like, how? Like how would that work? Honestly, like I can understand the protection aspect of it because of the thorns, right? Yeah, the thorns protection makes sense. That's a little like, how did we get to that conclusion? And understanding why some things have the properties they do can also incredibly help. Be like, okay, it's um for love because it's often given in romantic relationships. People often give roses as a sign of I love you, I care for you, you mean a lot to me. Like the symbolism behind it, the lore behind it can go a long way. And if you're looking for like scientific articles, a good place to start there would be anything with a .gov, anything with a .edu, right? The .coms are a little less credible, I'm not gonna lie, just because anyone can put anything out there. Peer-reviewed articles are really good, but sometimes it can be really hard to find a good peer-reviewed article, and spirituality and witchcraft aren't very much so researched, right? So something that you might have to do when you're trying to do that is, all right, let me look into the folk practices of it. Let me look into the folk magic of it, right? And be like, what are some things that people just said? And that's how that goes. But it can be a little bit difficult to do the research, but also there's so much research that goes into it. Like, even if you're just starting off and you're learning about, okay, well, what are the laws of spirituality, right? That's a little bit of research. That's not too much research, but it is a little bit of research. And then you go, well, how does this affect me in my life? What can I do to work on these laws? You have the law of attraction, the law of cause and effect, the law of potentiality. I think a nice thing to look at is the Hermetic principles, right? You may not agree with everything of the Hermetic principles, but they're definitely interesting, and I think they're also a nice way to start. And I think it gives you perspective, right? I think looking at different things to gain perspective is also a really smart idea. But that is just me and my thought processes. If you're looking at books for research, something that I would recommend, if you see a book and you're like, this is good, this is interesting, I would research the author a little bit, because if you research the author a little bit, you might find out that, hey, this author actually was bigoted. They were actually quite a horrible, horrible person. And I'm not saying disregard any and every information from them. I'm just saying, if you go into reading that book and like you've researched who this person was, it'll help you understand why they say the things that they did. Because a lot of things in spirituality and witchcraft are accidentally or on purposely rooted in racism. They're rooted in bigotry. So it's important to understand those things so that way you don't accidentally exclude and accidentally be a little bit racist, right? Because it happens quite often, and that's one of the problems with the community in of itself, is just blatant disregard for how things affect other people, the hurt, the ill intentions behind how things were originally said or used, like the terms white and black magic, that has racist connotations, honestly. And so sometimes it's important to do that research of like, who is this author? Why did they do this? There's some authors that literally they were like, okay, I'm gonna be in witchcraft for like X number of years, and then they turned to Christianity, and then they were like, I denounce everything that I did. They were like, nope, not me. That was horrible. That was bad. But they're still making money off of the books, off of the things that they made when they were into witchcraft. And I'm not saying you can't change your mind, because you absolutely can, right? But that's a little suspicious, at the very least, to me. So if I see an author who's done that, I'm gonna be like, I don't know about that. Maybe I'll find another book. Maybe I'll find another resource. That is me and my own opinions. So Sometimes people don't realize how research heavy spirituality and witchcraft is, and that is my main point of that. Another thing that I think that is incredibly important for when you're starting your practice, for when you're getting into spirituality, is yes, dive into things that you're interested in, right? Like learn about the things that you're like, that seems fun, that seems entertaining, like I want to learn more about that. Like I'm always an advocate for that. But be aware that not everything is for everyone, right? Like hoodoo, closed practices. Hoodoo is actually partially closed, but voodoo is a closed practice. And there are some other practices that are closed, right? Like you can't practice that practice unless you're initiated in, like someone from that thing has initiated you in, or you're a part of a certain religion, um, or a certain culture, and that's okay, right? That is a-okay. Let them have their thing. Let them do their thing, because more than likely you're gonna find something else that you resonate with better, right? Like let the close practices be. Let's not try and culture appropriate because that's a big thing that happens. Oh, really? Um, you saw it happen a lot more back when spirituality became like the big hit. Like everyone was doing spirituality back in like 2020. Um, but it's still a thing that happens, right? Like you're not supposed to have white sage unless you are Native American. Like that's the Native American saint, honestly. And you'll still see stores who sell white sage, honestly. And so it's not really ethical for you to be cleansing with that, especially when there are so many other ways to cleanse, right? Like there's a plethora of different ways to cleanse. Like you can cleanse with lavender, you can cleanse with cinnamon, you can clean. Cleaning is cleansing, right? You can do sound cleanses. There are so many other ways to cleanse. So to like stick to that one way that people have persistently said, hey, we don't appreciate you doing this, that's a little inconsiderate, right? That's not very mindful or very demure of you, honestly. And so I would just be aware of that. And I'm not saying that like you have to know everything that's closed, you have to know everything that's cultural appropriation, right? Because you're not gonna know. Sometimes you might accidentally get something that's like, ooh, I just found out this isn't for me, right? I just found out like using this and not being a part of said practice is cultural appropriation. And that happens to the best of us. The best thing to do is if you do that, find an ethical way to get rid of it, right? Give it to someone who is a part of that practice. Be like, I found out that I wasn't supposed to be using this, so I stopped using it, right? I buried it in the ground, um, just to give it back to the earth. And that's 100% valid. Like, if you accidentally do something and you're like, I learned about it, I found out, and then you are making an effort to do better, that doesn't make you a bad person. Okay? That doesn't mean, like, oh my gosh, you're the worst person in the world. It's okay to make mistakes. And that's what life is. Life is making mistakes. So don't be too hard on yourself for that. Don't like start worrying about, oh my gosh, is everything a close practice? Because no, but there are certain things that you do need to be aware of. That it's like, hey, whoa, watch out for this. That's not really for you unless you also do this. So those are just a couple of the things that I have to say about like getting into tarot. Well, not even tarot, just getting into spirituality and witchcraft and starting your journey of learning. You know, because a lot of people are curious how to learn, how to like where do you start, where do you go, like what's the first step, and the first step is going to be different for everyone. That's just how that goes. It's going to be different for everyone. So don't expect your experience, your spirituality or witchcraft practice to look like someone else's because it's just not. And you wouldn't want it to be. The best thing about spirituality and witchcraft is how uniquely individualized it is, right? Like just how much you can personalize it to you to make it your own. And it's literally the best thing ever, honestly. It's one of the things that I love about spirituality, and it just makes it so, so great. But, anyways, that's just my spill on that. Now it's time to get to some of the questions that you guys have asked from me. It's Q&A time with Beans. Let's get ready for it. Boom. So, fun thing about my podcast is if you have any questions, if you have any topics that you want me to talk about, the likelihood that I would talk about them, very high. Promise you. So if you want to know about something, if you have a question about something, put it in the comments. Ask me, and I might, very likely, answer it and talk about it. So, first question that we have here is, what is the number one tip for learning tarot? Um, I think the best thing that I can say for learning tarot is just to get into it, right? Like, some people feel really intimidated. They're like, I don't know what the cards mean. I don't know numerology. I don't know this. I don't know that. Just get into it. Buy you a tarot deck, buy you a book, and get into it, right? If you're not a book person, there are websites. There are tarot learning videos. There are some really amazing tarot learning videos on YouTube, actually. There are some people who have created Spotify playlists to learn tarot, and I think that that is just amazing. There are just so many different ways to learn tarot. There are people who teach classes. There are some for free. There are some that are not for free. But there's just so many different ways, honestly. And I think the best way to start is just to learn as you go. What I will say is something that is very helpful in learning tarot is knowing numerology, right? Knowing, number one, knowing numerology, but also figuring out how to read the Roman numerals, because most people, they aren't proficient in Roman numerals, right? So the way I learned how to be like, okay, which card comes first, what's the order of all of this, is I would shuffle my deck a couple of times, or after using it, I'd be like, all right, now it's time to put the deck back in order, right? And I'd start with the major arcana, start with the Fool, and I'd work my way back, and I'd be like, okay, this one goes after the Fool. And after enough times of doing that, you're like, you get the vibe. You're like, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, this is 20, this is 21. So it becomes easier. It's the repetition of it all, of like, let me put it back in order to familiarize myself with it. It really, really helps. But knowing the numerology also helps, because since every tarot card has a number on it, minus the court cards, right? You can pull a little bit of information from the numerology. You know, you can be like, 0 is about beginning, it's about wholeness, it's about starting something new, right? You can be like, okay, 5 is about struggle, it's about conflict, it's about difficulties. So then you see like the 5 of Wands, and you're like, oh, this is a struggling, conflicting card, right? You see the 5 of Swords, and you're like, okay, there is some struggle, there is some conflict going on here. And it helps you be able to piece things together just a little bit better. I would also break it down by its suits. You have the Wands, the Cups, the Swords, and the Pentacles, right? Each one of these suits has its own like little meaning, right? Wands are usually about passion, career, desire, aspirations, those types of things. Pentacles are usually about stability, comfortability, safety, money, those types of things. Cups are usually about emotions. Swords are about thought, intellect, thinking. They're very, very analytical in a sense. So if you break them down to like, okay, cups are usually about this, and then you add in the numerology, it helps you be able to piece together the cards, what they're saying, just a little bit better. You can also break it down by like, what's happening in this picture? Like, what's going on right now? What is this person doing in this picture, right? You have the Four of Swords, which the Four of Swords is someone who's laying down, right? There are some swords hanging over. He's laying on a sword, but he's laying down. He's resting, right? So obviously, he's taking a break. He needs a rest. Things are a little bit stressful. They're a little bit chaotic. And that is a rest card. So, like, the more you break it down, the easier it will be for you. And there are some cards that are just a little bit hard to get a grip on, like the Hierophant. Hierophant is a struggle all of the time. The court cards can be very difficult just because they're personality cards, honestly. They are personality cards. They're like, okay, this person, here's their personality, here's what they're doing, like, here's the vibe of who they are. Sometimes they're descriptor cards of like, we're physically describing people. I don't ever use them for description, right? But that's just me and what I do. But that's one of the best things that I can do. And also, there's this one thing, well, there are a couple of things that are incorrect about tarot, like the misconceptions, if you must. So some of the misconceptions about tarot are, number one, you have to be gifted your first tarot deck. You don't have to be gifted your first tarot deck, actually. I think that was just a thing that came out, especially back in 2020 when it became like all of the rave, to kind of like push some people away, because not who really is going to buy you a tarot deck, right? If you come from a family who like they don't support that, that's not their thing, they're not going to buy you a tarot deck, right? So then it isolates a whole group of people from being able to do tarot, from being able to do something that interests them, from being able to do something where they could really learn and benefit and learn to trust their intuition, you know? So that was mostly a thing to basically make others feel like I'm better than you. I can do this, you can't. Like I have something that you don't, you know? That's basically where that came from. But you absolutely don't have to be gifted your first tarot deck ever. I bought my first tarot deck. Okay? So it's not like oh my gosh, I can't start tarot if no one buys me a tarot deck. Wrong. Buy your own. The Rider-Waite Smith is a great place to start, in my opinion. It's really cheap, actually, pretty inexpensive. They have tarot decks at $5 and below, right? They're not the best tarot decks, they're not the sturdiest tarot decks, but they have tarot decks at $5 and below. They have oracle decks at $5 and below. They have affirmation cards at $5 and below. Okay, so wherever you can get it, however, perfectly fine. If someone decides to give you a tarot deck, that's great. That's amazing. Okay? But it's not something where like you need it in order to start. Another misconception is you have to do tarot every day. You don't. Okay? That if you do tarot every day, that'll easily lead to burnout because tarot uses up a lot of your energy sometimes, and it can be overwhelming. There are 78 different tarot cards, all with different meanings. It can be incredibly overwhelming. So like trying to consistently do it every day, it'll make you exhausted. So I don't recommend it. What I will say though is if you are learning, repetition is key, right? Like consistently trying to be like, okay, well, let me look at these cards. Let me try and learn them. Let me pull a card every couple of days, right? Every other day, 3 times a week, whatever, to see how my day is going to go. Like the consistency of pulling out a card, trying to read it, trying to interpret it, and being like, okay, was it correct? Was it not correct? It helps incredibly. It helps you learn to trust your intuition. It helps you learn to read the tarot cards. It helps you learn to like figure out what's going on, right? But you don't absolutely have to do it every day. And it doesn't make you not a real witch. There is no such thing as a real witch, right? And I hate that term. I hate the term real witch because what even makes a witch a real witch, right? Because there are so many different types of witches out there, right? And they all do a multitude of different things. We have green witches, we have kitchen witches, we have crystal witches, right? We have eclectic witches. So you could say something and you could be wrong, right? Because not all witches are going to do the thing. So there is no real thing about being a real witch, okay? Let people practice their practice, however they want to practice it, honestly. What I will say is there are some people who do witchcraft who aren't genuine. That is a thing that you see a lot, especially on TikTok, where it's like people are just doing things for the clout, right? They're doing things for the clout of it all, or just to try and finesse people to get money. And I'm not a fan of that. But even then, I wouldn't call people not a real witch because of that. I would just say they're not genuine. They're not being 100% honest. They're not being real. And sadly, that happens a little bit too often, especially in the TikTok space, but especially after it became a huge thing after the pandemic or during the pandemic, And that's one of those things where you just have to use your discernment. You just have to be a little bit skeptical. You just have to go in to, like, especially people who are advertising their practice, you just have to be like, let me be a little bit cautious. Let me be a little bit careful because even if you're not in spirituality or witchcraft, people are not always going to be genuine. People are not always going to have your best interest in mind. A lot of people are selfish and they only care about themselves. And that's a thing that you always have to look out for, even outside of spirituality and witchcraft, because sadly, that's just the way life goes. So that is what that is. Another thing that I want to address, some misconceptions about tarot, is it's okay to take a break, right? On par with the you don't have to do tarot readings every day, it's okay to take a break. breaks are needed. Sometimes life gets crazy, sometimes life gets chaotic, sometimes things are just overwhelming, and you don't have the time for tarot. You don't have the time for your practice. You don't have the time to really invest in it the way that you want to invest in it. And so it's okay to be like, let me take a step back from this. Let me not do this right now to make sure that I'm okay, to make sure that I'm okay mentally, physically, emotionally. Let me make sure I'm doing what I need to do to take care of me. Okay? And it doesn't even matter how long the break is. It could be a day break, valid, good. Doesn't make you any less of a real practitioner. It could be a week break, valid, good. Doesn't mean anything. It could be a 2-year break, which is still valid, which is still good, right? You can come back after 2 years and be like, okay, let me get back into the groove of things, and it would be 100% okay. It wouldn't make you any less of a rich art tarot reader or a practitioner. It wouldn't take away any of the knowledge that you've already learned, that's for sure. So if you ever feel overwhelmed, if you ever feel like, you know what, I just can't do this today, take a break. Please take a break, because I would hate for people to get overwhelmed. I would hate for people to get overworked, and just feel super exhausted, and try and push themselves to do something that they're really not energetically feeling, honestly. So that is what I have to say about the number one tips for tarot. Let's get into the next question of it all. The next question is, was there any time you considered quitting being a reader? And I think this is a funny question, because actually the answer to this is all the time, right? And it's because of TikTok, right? It's because of TikTok. Outside of TikTok, I love doing tarot readings. Tarot readings are great. They're fun. I love helping people. I love giving people guidance, making them feel better. It's one of those things that just brings me great joy in life. But the moment you decide to basically like put out there that you're into witchcraft or spirituality or tarot, right, you're going to get some backlash. And so they're the people who come in and they're like, this is wrong, seek Jesus. They're like, I rebuke you. And that just gets so annoying. Like the constant hate, the constant like criticism of people who genuinely don't know what they're talking about. And that's what's hilarious, is they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're saying. They have 0 point information about the whole thing. And yet they're so quick to tell you what is right and what is wrong, you know? And there are so many different religions out there. There are so many different concepts, so many different ideas of what is right and what is wrong. It's like, who's to say that your religion is the only correct religion? Really, realistically. And sometimes that's just one of those things where it's like, I'm tired of dealing with these people. I'm tired of these stupid people in my space trying to tell me how to live my life, right? And then and then I do some readings and I'm like, actually I love this. Actually I do quite enjoy this, So it I think about quitting doing it on TikTok quite often. Another thing that makes me want to stop is sometimes this was more back in the day. Back in the day, a couple of years ago, tarot reading used to be my main source of income. It's not my main source of income anymore. But that's stressful. That's incredibly stressful, especially when you start to do that on TikTok. Because if you get banned on TikTok, and TikTok loves to ban you for anything, any and every reason, it messes with your money, right? It messes with your money. And for some reason, sometimes videos will go viral and it'll reach the wrong side of TikTok. And then I have to deal with all these hate comments. I have to deal with all these haters. And I do that instead of actually doing readings, because my lives aren't going out to the right people, and that's incredibly aggravating. That's incredibly annoying. And sometimes that makes me want to be like, you know what, let me stop doing readings on TikTok. I think I'm going to quit. Right. But like I said, that was mostly when it was my main source of income. It's not my main source of income anymore. But outside of that, not really, I'm down to take a break. I'm down to be like, okay, let me take a pause on my spiritual journey, which I have done actually. because I'm in school, I'm in college, I get busy, I do a lot, and sometimes I'm like, I don't have the time that I would like to invest into my spiritual studies right now, into my spiritual journey right now. And so I take month-long breaks. I take like 3 month breaks sometimes. Um, and that's okay. That's fine. It is what it is. But I always come back and I'm always like, oh man, I've missed this. Um, so I do quite enjoy what I do. So I don't think I'm ever really going to quit. What I might end up doing one day is I might end up stop doing readings on TikTok, you know? But like stop doing readings forever. I don't see that happening. But who knows? Life is crazy. Life is chaotic. Anything can happen, you know? It do be what it do be sometimes. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it. Anyways, on to the next question is what that is. What is your least favorite part about being a witch? I think that would have to be the same thing with the people on TikTok being super annoying, being super like, okay, I'm judging you, I don't even know you, that type of vibe. What also is something that I don't really like about not necessarily being a witch, it's more about the community, is that there's so much hate in the community, right? You would think that because we're all being judged, like there are so many people who like just automatically judge us for what we do and automatically will be like, you're wrong, we hate you, that we would band together, sort of, and be like, let's create a community. And so badly do I want to create a community. I think that would be great. I think that would be awesome, just to have a group of people where it's like we can share our experiences, we can share our thoughts, our ideas, help each other learn, grow together. I think it would be amazing. um but there are so many people in this community who just tear other people down, right? They don't want a community. They just want to be the best. They just want to be, I know everything, um, and I'm better than you. And I'm like, where does that get you? Why don't you want a community, right? You don't want someone to help you. You don't want someone to lean on when things get rough and tough. I would like someone to lean on. I would like someone to talk through the craziness that we go through. Um, and I think that's crazy because you'll see other tarot readers, you'll see other people who are part of the practice come in and immediately judge you. They'll be like, oh, you just started your practice? Wow, lame. And they'll be like, you're not a real witch. You're not this, you're not that. They'll be like, I'm better than you. Okay. Number one, I didn't ask. Number two, why? Where did all this hate come from? Why can't we just support each other and want to learn and grow together? Or people will judge you for not doing things the way that they specifically would do them, right? Like I've gotten so much hate on the way I shuffle cards, right? Let me show you. I shuffle the cards like this, right? We deal with that. I don't know how to do a bridge, and I turn it around and I shuffle it again, right? And that's what I do. And some people are like, you can't shuffle the cards like that. It messes with the energy. It's not accurate. It's not right. Number one, there is no one specific way to shuffle cards, right? They're like, oh, you have to do it so and so way, Sometimes I get a little bit of hate because I don't take flyaway cards, and people are like, your readings aren't as accurate because of that. And I'm like, listen, the way I do my practice is the way I do my practice. The way you do your practice is the way you do your practice. Both are valid. There is no one right way to do anything, ever. And like I said, that's one of my favorite things about spirituality. That's one of my favorite things about witchcraft. And sometimes people don't understand that. They're like, it's my way or the highway. If you're not doing exactly what I'm doing, then you're wrong. And that just screams such Christian vibes to me, right? Because Christians are the same way. Like hardcore Christians are like, if you're not doing exactly what I'm doing, you're wrong. And it just feels so hypocritical, you know? Incredibly hypocritical. So that's something that I don't like about the community, is that a lot of people in the community don't want to support each other. They just want to tear people down, you know? And I dislike that very much. But I don't think I have anything that I dislike about being a witch per se. I love it. Yeah, I love being able to come up with my own spells. I love the creativity of it all. Of like, okay, how do I come up with the spell? How do I make what I want to manifest happen? I love making oils. It's super fun. Makes me like mixing the herbs and oils together. Love it. Brings out my inner child. I love making bath salts. I love connecting with my spirit guides, my ancestors. I love making my little altar. I love looking at my little altar and being like, okay, let's offer this to my spirit guides today. Like you guys have done such a great job. Let me just thank you. Let me just appreciate you for a moment. Um, and so there are a lot of things that I love about my practice and spirituality, and only a couple of things that I dislike about my practice or spirituality, but none are directly related to my practice. So, next question. What is your favorite way to cleanse? Which I think is a great question, and I think also this is probably going to be our last question of this podcast. So if you have any other things that you want me to talk about, any other questions that you would like to see me answer, don't forget to put the questions in the comments because I will probably answer them. The likelihood is very high. Anything you want to hear me talk about, I'm down. Like Chinatown. Anyways, back to the question. What is my favorite way to cleanse? I'm a fan of simplicity, right? Because first of all, I think I have ADHD. I'm not diagnosed, so this isn't me being like I have ADHD. Obviously, it's just a thing where it's like I'm like, yeah, I be doing a lot of the ADHD things. It's a strong possibility, you know. But I am horrible at planning, So like how people do very elaborate, very intricate rituals. I'm too spontaneous for that, right? The actual planning of it all, I really almost never do that. There's like every once in a blue moon. Fun fact: I'm filming this on the full moon, super blue full moon, is what that is. We love that. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. I hope everyone is enjoying it. Anyways, it happens every once in a blue moon where I sit there and I'm like, you know what? And on this day, I'm going to do this ritual, and I'm choosing this day because it brings in this energy and I'm invoking this planet, and I'm using these colors. Like it's very rarely that I do that. I only do that when people commission me for spells. I'm like, okay, let me plan this, right? Let me think of all the things that I need to do. And that's the only time that I actually plan that. Any spells that I do for myself, I'm not planning. They're all very last minute. I'm like, I should probably do a spell like that. And then a week or so passes by and I'm like, all right, time to do the spell. And I'm like, I hope I have everything I need. And I'm like, I'm looking through my herbs and I'm like, okay, what's the property of this again? Right. I'm using this and this has this property. I'm using that. And I'm like, what candles do I have actually? So it's very last minute. It's very like working with what I have to get what I want to do done. So I'm a fan of simplicity. And one of the simplest ways to cleanse is cleaning. So oftentimes the best way that I cleanse is I'll clean my room, right? I'm like, my room is dirty. It's creating stagnant energy. We don't need that in here. I'm cleaning it, right? While I'm cleaning it, I might put on some high vibration sounds, some sounds to bring in some good energy, just to set the mood. I might light some incense where it's like, which incense has the energy that I want to bring in right now? Am I trying to bring in loving vibes? What's the mood? And I'll do a little bit of that. And if I physically feel like, I'm just not in the best of mood, I feel like maybe I might have some stagnant energy on me, like things just haven't been going my way, I will cleanse my body, right? I will go in the shower, scrub my body down with the intention of getting rid of any negative, harmful, unwanted energy. I'm like, we don't need this because you ever felt how you physically feel different after you take a good, nice shower where you're like, I feel clean. Like the mood is just different. The vibe is just different, And I'm telling you, sometimes simplicity is the best way. So I'm a fan of the simple ways of doing things, honestly. I think another way that I really enjoy cleansing is smells, right? Like I like using herbs. So the smells of different herbs like lavender, I'm a big fan of lavender. I think it's great. I think it smells beautiful. I tend to use that one a lot, right? And I have my essential oils. So Every once in a while, I'll use my essential oil diffuser and I'll be like, all right, let's put a couple drops of lavender in there, clean the space out, clean it out, clean it out. And that's how that goes, right? If I'm feeling really fancy, I might use some crystals. Some of the crystals that I would use to cleanse is selenite / satin spar, great for cleansing, or clear quartz. I'm a fan of clear quartz too, just for simple cleansing measures. But like I said, the most common thing you'll see me do, my favorite thing to do, clean. Super simple, super easy, and I I just don't have the time or the planning for elaborate rituals like I would hope. But um, that is all that I have to say for this podcast. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this podcast. I hope that it's been informational. I hope that it's been educational. I hope that it's helped you. And if you want to find me on other places, number one, I have a YouTube, right? Everything is Beans the Witch. YouTube is Beans the Witch. Instagram is Beans the Witch. TikTok is Beans the Witch. Some of the things that I offer, I sell my oils. I sell bath salts. I do tarot readings, right? So that's just a little bit about me. If you're looking for me on other places, that's where you can find me. And I hope everyone has a beautiful, amazing rest of their day.